Whoops. Oh, all right. Welcome to Witchpolice Radio. That was interesting. Usually it doesn't tell me. I don't know if you heard that, but it announced that the meeting is being recorded, which is kind of cool. But yeah, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm on the internet, as are we all, because we're still in the throes of this pandemic. And I have someone on the show today who I wanted to talk to for a while. I've definitely listened to your music in various forms, I guess, for a number of years now. And it's nice to finally get the chance to meet as it is in this context, and talk about what you've been doing and what you have coming up. So I think the best way to
Thank
start
you.
things off is if you want to just maybe introduce yourself and give a bit of background about what it is you do in the local music scene.
Yeah, likewise meeting you. I've known about your show for quite some time now, and I have friends that have been on the show and friends that listen to you. So
Yeah, cool.
it's a pleasure being here. Yeah, what I do, I'm an artist, local artist from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I do hip hop. I experiment with hip hop. Yeah, so I'm still in this group called the Lytics, local hip hop group that's been doing our thing for a while. And I just started releasing my own solo music under my moniker Anthony OKS, which is pretty much just my name, because the OKS stands for my middle name and last name initial.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that. I figured, yeah. Maybe that's a good place to start, though. Is the difference between doing this on your own and doing it with the Lytics? Because the Lytics, how long have you guys been around for? It's been a while now, right?
Well,
You've been actively making music.
Yeah, so 18, 12, 13 years we've been 14, 15 years we've been actively making music.
Okay.
Maybe 13 years we've been touring.
Yeah, so that's a long chunk of time to be with any one project, right? And I mean, you have the added on top of that, you guys are all family too, right? So I mean, the dynamic there has got to be a very strong one for the group to have succeeded as well as it did, and to just keep pumping out good music year after year.
Thank you.
So how does it differ now, just with the idea of it's just you don't have the other guys that you've obviously been with your whole life in one way or another, right? To sort of lean on to make the music with, and now it's just the focus is on you solely.
It's a little different. It's actually quite a bit different. Luckily, like this second time around, I'm releasing an EP, probably jumping ahead or whatever, but I'm releasing an EP called In the Garden. That's coming out on July 23rd with a label called Laughing Heart Music, LHM Records out of Newfoundland.
Oh, cool.
But so this project with LHM, has been very team oriented. Like I feel like I have a team I do have a team now and people to bounce ideas off of, like in a formal setting where like, in the groups, in the Lytics, you just had that as a group. It just came naturally, because that was your job. But with this, it's like, I have people to talk to about the things I'm up to or things I'm thinking of. I still talk to my group about my music as well. They help me out, with my own ideas. But with the label, they kind of step in and act as that, like, that bounce. Yeah, to just bounce ideas off of about stuff. So it is a little different, but it's kind of the same in a way, but it's still very different.
What do you think that your role is within the Lytics? Because I mean, obviously the group works well as a group. You all have very good chemistry, naturally being family, right? And you work well, together. There's different voices, different sounds within that. But what do you think that you kind of, what is your sound within the larger group, and how does that translate to your solo material?
My sound in the group is, I feel like, very different than my solo sound.
Okay.
Just naturally, when you start doing projects on your own, your vulnerabilities start to show a little more.
Sure,
so for example, on my solo stuff, I'm singing a lot more. I'm testing my sounds out, in the group, I have a very specific role, is just to rap.
Sure,
Rap the best I possibly can, and perform the hardest I possibly can. In as a solo artist, it's more complex, I think, and there's a lot more variables at play. Where in the group, I know I gotta write really well for this song or this part, and I got to perform really well for this tour or this show.
Are you able to kind of produce the type of material, lyrically even, that maybe you wouldn't have been an option with the Lytics, just in the sense that now it's the focus is only on you, and you can be more, can you be more kind of introspective or more personal with what you're doing that maybe wouldn't have been an option because there's so many people in the other project?
Yeah, I think that's just the nature of the way projects are done, right?
Yeah,
Like
sure.
when you're in a group, you it's kind of like when you're back in school, you have like this isn't going to sound fun, but it is a lot of fun. You kind of have like an assignment, like you have a goal in mind where, okay, this song is about this is what we're tackling. Where when I'm writing on my own material, it's kind of like when I sit down, I don't know what I'm about to do. I don't know what's about to happen. I might go one way this week, one way that week, and then one way the third week, fourth, fifth week, sixth week. And then in a few months, the song might be completely different. Okay. And then I might change the instrumentation and so I might change the feature or whatever. So it's like, you never really know what's going to happen to the song until a specific point where you're, with group members, you owe them that, like
right.
You're responsible to be in that communication with your partners, and they need to know where you're at with what you got going on with the project, because what I do is dependent on them, vice versa. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Does it almost feel like you're starting from scratch as yourself? Just because, I mean, the Lytics, I think, has got to be one of the most successful in terms of just getting recognition outside of Winnipeg, local bands for of any genre for quite a while. I mean, you guys were, for a few years there, you were popping up everywhere and getting a lot of really high profile attention, right? So this has got to seem a little bit like you're sort of back at the beginning, although I'm sure you still have all the connections and all of the listeners and everything that come along with that. But does it seem like almost a refresh as an artist?
Lots of the time it does, and sometimes I don't have the connections because
right.
I think I might, and then I'll send an email, and then I just won't hear back. Just won't hear back from this person because it's not the Lytics, which is totally fair. It's a completely new project, and I treat it as such. It should be. I don't want people to expect they're getting the Lytics when they're not. The Lytics is a very special thing, you know what I mean? Like, it's very different, it's very special, it can't be recreated. What I'm doing is me, and I've been doing solo music since 2018, so it hasn't been long, and who's to tell what it's going to turn into. But yeah, it's been great so far. I'm getting a lot of good feedback on stuff.
That's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good that you can succeed in both directions, right?
But yeah, it does feel like a completely new thing. It's a little scary sometimes, but it's also a lot of fun because that's what I live for. You know what I mean? To be as an artist, like my thing is like I want to feel like it's important to have something feel like you've never done it before. That's what draws me to experiences in music and trying new sounds. Like I really like to push myself and be in vulnerable positions with creativity. So and again, flipping back to the Lytics, it's like when we go on tour in Europe and you're playing to a new crowd in a new country, to a new market that's never heard of you before. It's like you're a new artist, but then you might go somewhere else that you've done the circuit at a bunch of times, and there might be, I'm good, is my connection stable? You're still here, yeah. There might be a few thousand people at that okay. There might be a few thousand people at that show. So, when I start doing more of that on the solo side, that experience will come through and show, hopefully, because like I've done that in a different form, like you said.
Totally. Before. Yeah. Well, one thing, you just put out a single, I guess it was a few weeks back now, right?
Clearly Now came out last Friday, I think.
Okay, it was even more recent than I thought. Okay, yeah, cool. Well, listening to that, one thing that I noticed too is like the very prominent saxophone on that track, which is and that's live, right? You have someone playing that live?
Yeah.
that gives a totally different vibe to I mean, without that, I think the song would be completely different. So what was
Totally.
the decision to put stuff like that in? Like what I guess what kind of sound are you looking for with your own solo stuff that I hate asking people what genre of music, because obviously you're
Yeah.
doing hip hop and hip hop influenced music, but are there certain styles that you kind of want to explore, and certain instrumentation or things like that that maybe you haven't touched on before that you're getting the chance to now?
Yeah, sometimes the track is driven by like one or two elements. I really tried to strip this EP back a little bit, like on the production side. Me and
Okay.
the producer who produced most of it, his name's Paul Shear. He's originally from Winnipeg, but he's living in North Vancouver right now.
Okay.
So he produced like 95% of this EP. And he played a lot of instruments on it too. And prior to writing, like we just kind of sat down and we're like, we want to make it more of a minimal instrumentalist kind of driven EP,
Okay.
a little more jazzy. That's why you're hearing the sax.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of the songs have live drums by Curtis Nosad,
Oh, cool.
who
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty well known jazz drummer,
Yeah.
originally
Definitely.
from Winnipeg. He's in New
Definitely.
York right now, but people like that appear on the EP a little bit here and there. So guitarist and all sorts of musicians appear on it. So and from all over Canada too, which is cool.
That is
So
cool.
yeah, that's kind of the vibe of this EP. Just more of like a live, like instrument driven kind of sound. Mhm.
Obviously you can't do this now because the pandemic's on, but is this something you want to take live, like with that kind of instrumentation, whether it's those actual players or not? Are you hoping to be able to present this in a performance setting with live saxophones, guitars, drums, whatever?
For sure, for sure. The thing about doing that is it costs a lot of money.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and truthfully, like I'm a fan of both type of styles of shows. Like I love hip hop shows with just the MC and the DJ.
Yeah.
There's something really special about that. Pair of turntables and just the MC and the DJ. And then there's something really special about like watching groups like the Roots, for example, who's a ensemble, like a
Yeah. Yeah.
jazz band with a rapper. You know what I mean? That's really dope too. And I'd be down to try both kind of styles of live shows. I think both really drive me and interest me. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna try them out down the road. But the thing about doing that is it's very expensive when you're
Yeah. Of
touring
course.
with the
Yeah.
whole band. It just changes the whole it changes the whole dynamic of it.
Yeah.
So I would want to be making enough money to be able to pay everyone fairly. And,
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's a difference between two people, and then six or whatever, right? I mean, just
yeah,
places to stay, food, paying people for their work. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you what do you think the connection is between hip hop and jazz? I mean, not in the sense of samples being used in beats, but obviously there's a lot of comparisons stylistically. Even on the surface, they might not seem like they're a good match, but they really fit well together. What do you think is the connection? Why do you think they work so well together, even though they seem, again, on the surface, like pretty disparate genres?
And you kind of brought the point up that you said something about like not the samples, right? You said something
Yeah,
about
just like the aesthetic of it, almost like, I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, someone playing jazz sax is going to be very different from someone rapping, but there's still there's roots that connect the two, right? I mean, and you can sort of I feel like it often works really well when you're melding the two genres. And someone
Mhm.
like the Roots, as an example, like you said, I mean, they're doing a lot of jazz playing and then hip hop on top of it, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, and it's something that I'm still also trying to understand because sometimes it doesn't work perfectly.
Sure, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it feels very forced, but like I'm not, and I could be down for this, in the future of having a jazz band actually help
okay,
write music for one of my projects.
yeah, yeah,
I'm sure that would be very dope, but I personally need to learn more about the jazz genre and how to write that type of music wholeheartedly.
hmm
Um, for me, I like elements of jazz in hip hop. And like all my favorite producers, hip hop producers
yeah,
have elements of that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Whether it's like just off the top, DJ Premier, for example, or Pete Rock,
Yeah.
or Jay Dilla, you know what I mean?
You
People
know, they
like
all have
that.
a really good jazz section in the record collection, right?
Yeah, they all have a really good, and you can tell when you're listening to their beats, they understand the music. And yeah, like I feel like I understand it. I understand how to work with a producer on what elements to bring out of the beat
Right.
to connect it back to jazz.
Okay.
You know, because like we're talking about a very specific niche of hip hop, which is like jazzy hip hop.
Yeah,
So
it's a whole subgenre, right? Yeah.
it's a whole subgenre. So I understand that aspect of it. But when you think of like traditional jazz and traditional hip hop, they are very different. You know, the tempos are
Oh,
different.
yeah.
The pace is very different. You know what I mean? But like you said, I agree. When they're melded and they're connected, there's this like it creates both entities create this new thing, like a transformer.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, like you said, it's just really, it's one of the dopest sounds you can find in music, I think.
Yeah, for sure. When it's done right.
When it's done right. It's done right. There's this beat called Kamal by Jay Dilla. It's got a jazz, it's got a heavy jazz vibe to it. And it's one of my, I think there's like a 20-minute version on YouTube.
Cool.
When you put that on, it kind of spins you into this trance. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
It does something.
Cool. Well, this is kind of connected to what we were just talking about, but what is your take on kind of where hip hop is now? Because I mean, like, I know that's a big question, but you know, we're talking about this sort of subgenres of jazz influenced hip hop, and you were saying you're making your record a little more minimal, but you're using live instrumentation as well. Like, where is hip hop as a genre now? And where do you fit into it? Because it seems like because it's gotten so big over the last 30-40 years, it seems like it's splintered off in so many different directions. And I don't know if there is this, I don't know if there's a question or is it just me making an observation, but I don't know if there is really sort of a general agreed upon, this is what hip hop sounds like in 2021.
Yeah, to be honest, like though I'm a hip hop artist, I listen to like, since COVID, I've been listening to more, I've listened to way other types of stuff. I haven't really been, like, I've been listening to hip hop for sure, but I go to the hip hop that I like.
Yeah, I do that
too. Whereas pre-COVID, I was kind of listening to everything because I was DJing a lot more.
Okay,
you know what I mean? So I was kind of like forced to listen to everything. Where now, like, I can't. It's hard to answer that question because I don't really know where hip hop's at. You know, I feel like apps like Spotify and Apple have played their role. Now you can go and find exactly what you're looking for at the exact time you're looking for it, which is a super cool thing. Like, there's this, for example, there's this playlist on Spotify called Jazz Rap. You know, it's very, very specific. If you're looking for jazz rap, you can go hear that. So there's social elements like that are really cool to see. But at the same time, a lot of things are also getting lost. Like, a lot of good, because not all music gets placed on playlists.
Of course,
you know what I mean? So I think, like, you know, in terms of listening to music, just where music's at right now, placing on playlists is very important as an independent artist.
Sure.
But yeah, it's not just about the apps. I still love record digging and going to the record stores when I can and looking at who played what on different songs and albums, and that's a very important aspect to music too right now. But like the two, at least I feel like in North America don't really connect at any point. Or at least in Europe, like in Germany, for example, they want to buy your LP vinyl at your show. You know what I mean? They want the little cassette players. They want all that stuff. They want the CDs. You know, in Japan, there's the I don't know, 15-foot story CD store where they just sell CDs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's all this cool stuff all over the world, but here, you know, I don't really know. I don't really know where music's at here in North America right now. It's hard to say because, like, there's hip hop artists there's hip hop artists that like we know of, we grew up on, I'm sure, that tour internationally,
Yep.
but can't tour in their own state or their own country. You know what I mean? Dope stuff happening, but just not at home.
Yeah, that's not the audience for it anymore. Yeah.
That's not the audience for it anymore. So I feel like pickings are kind of thin here sometimes, especially in Canada, being a hip hop artist in Canada.
Yeah.
You know, you only have a few options to kind of get seen.
Yeah.
Actually, shout out shout out CBC. They've been doing a great job lately of highlighting hip hop in Canada. You know, there's a couple things going on, like The Block on CBC. That's a new show.
Yeah. Well, they did a whole documentary podcast on Super Duty Tough Work.
And shout out Super Duty Tough Work. Illest.
Yeah, really. That's a great example of live instrumentation, right? And yeah, that's a perfect example. Yeah, those guys are great. Yeah,
one of the illest groups out right now. And like, yeah, you know, Black on the Prairies is another thing CBC's doing. They're highlighting.
Yeah, I saw something about that. Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, you know, there's things happening now in Canada which are really cool to see, but yeah, we haven't really. I don't think it's hard to say where music, at least hip hop music's going right now.
Yeah,
I think it's going in a better direction than it was yesterday, though.
Well, that's good. That's a
there's tons of talent though. We're ready. Like,
yeah,
you know, like Winnipeg's had tons of great hip hop acts throughout the years.
Totally.
Every province, you know, the whole country, it's there. It's just now you got to feed it and let it get to where it needs to be.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, and I know that's a pretty impossible to answer question, but the reason I ask stuff like that is because, like, I listen to a lot of different kinds of music, which is probably obvious to people listening to the show because I have so many different types of artists on here. But hip hop in particular is one of those genres where I love it, but I have a certain era and style that I love, and I have all my tapes still, and I have my CDs still, and I've read my records, and I kind of like anything that deviates too much from that 90s stuff that I like, I get lost, and I find it's easier for me to get lost, and maybe it's because an age thing, and I'm too old to figure it out, but it seems like it's changing so much, and that cool. Yeah.
Can I ask you, do you like the sound of the 90s, or are you also willing to listen to young artists coming up that still have that sound, or are you specifically listening to those artists from that time?
No, it's the sound. It's the sound of the 90s for sure. And earlier too. I mean, and even into the 2000s as well. But it's just, I feel like for whatever reason, with hip hop, more than with metal or country or punk or anything else, I feel like I'm stuck. And again, I don't think it's a question for you. It's just me ranting. But but I don't know what it is. Yeah, I feel like there's definitely artists. I mean, Super Duty Tough Work is a great example of someone locally that I really dig. And you know, I have their tape. I listen to it all the time. They're great live. And that works for me. But then you can have some other people coming up who are equally as talented and equally as, you know, creative, and for whatever reason, the style doesn't fit. And I think that's kind of my issue with hip hop, in that it's become like a big umbrella genre with all these offshoots. And it's, I find it hard to fit in with it. Whereas something like country music, for example, you know, I listen to a lot of different subgenres of that, and they're very different. But I know where I'm at with it. Right.
Yeah. I was listening to, what was I listening to the other day? 1 second. I made a country playlist.
Cool.
Yeah, someone I work with was putting me on country, and I was like, I usually don't like country, but the few artists that I was listening to, I really liked. Like, I don't know, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and there's a George Strait song on here, and Willie Nelson. You know, the old stuff. I think the old country music, it's storytelling.
Totally, which is what hip hop is.
Which is exactly what hip hop is. But when you're younger and you're a little more ignorant, you're like, no, I don't like, you know what I mean? But it's just storytelling at the end of it. It's poetry. I write poetry as well, so I really like to fall in love with what's being said and the wordplay and everything like that.
Well, let's just skip ahead to the EP that you have coming out, because that's not until the summer. But what are the details about that? What's the story behind that record?
In the Garden. it's, you know, like I was actually thinking about this the other day. Actually, I used to watch my mom garden
Okay.
growing up, and it was super, it was super peaceful. And when I looked at her, she would always just be in this like Zen mode. You know what I
Yeah, yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
it's like she went out there in the backyard garden to garden and just to get away from everything else.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I kind of like, I was in that same position writing this record, you know, amongst COVID and while we were locked, we were locked down at one point, and
yeah,
now we're in another lockdown. But in 2020, I'm talking about the 2020 lockdown, I just, I was stressed out and I needed to release some energy. So I went to the garden. I went and wrote this EP, and it kind of reminded me of how my mom looked,
okay,
you know, back then. And I started, you know, this concept started brewing in my head, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna call it In the Garden, because, you know, things are being manifested here. Whatever is happening right now, something is happening, something is growing and coming to life.
yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to kind of capture that in the title. So yeah, that's kind of what the EP is about too, from song to song.
Oh, cool. Okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah, it's kind of like a play on life and living and being in the moment kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
Mhm.
gardening's a good metaphor for that, for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
So, and you said that's coming out in July, right? Are you hoping that
July 23rd.
are you hoping that things might ease up a bit, you know, in terms of the pandemic by then? Or I mean, I know no one knows, of course, right? But
I'm not, I'm not really, I mean, I hope so for sure. Not, you know, not even selfishly speak, like I
yeah,
hope
yeah, yeah.
so just
Just for, like for the
generally
world, right? Yeah, yeah,
for the
yeah, yeah,
world.
yeah.
Yeah. I hope it eases up, and I want to see these artists start playing more shows again, because
Totally.
everyone's kind of been out of work. But for my EP, you know, I would like it to ease up. I have a show booked at the Beer Can for July 22nd.
Oh, cool.
Um, so yeah, I hope it eases up. But you know, I didn't start writing this EP, you know, with the idea that I didn't start writing this EP being promised that there was not going to be a pandemic when I finished it and
Right,
it was
right.
released. I started writing it because I love music and I love doing this. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And so I'm just kind of letting it be, and just gonna let it go and see what happens. And um, you know, if I can't really, if I can't really play it much this year, I'm already writing new music anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you know, yeah, like, yeah, it'll happen eventually, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess it would be a nice coincidence if things did happen by the time it comes out. But yeah, no. So everyone's in the dark about what's going on right now with this. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, it'll be super dope. I hope it eases up by the time I'm ready to release this.
yeah,
Um, you know, and the right kind of things will happen, right?
for sure. What
Mhm.
is the best way if someone's you know, hearing about your solo project for the first time on this podcast? What's the best way for them to find out what's going on with your releases, to hear your singles you have out now, to hear your previous stuff that you've done? What's the best option to find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Spotify. You can find me on the apps like Apple Music. I'm on the social media stuff too, so Instagram, and they got a Facebook page and
Yeah.
Twitter and all that. LHM is my record label. You can find me on there. And I'm super amateur right now because my computer looks like it's about to die. So while I'm talking to you, I'm just gonna plug this in.
Yeah, yeah, go
But
for
I
it.
had
Yeah.
it close. I had it close by though. At least
Nice, nice.
I had it close by. Yeah, you can find me over there. You know what I mean? Like my music's up there. So yeah, just go and check it out.
Cool. And then what's going on with Lytics? Is there anything planned for the relatively near future for the group, or is it still just kind of quiet at the moment?
Uh it's the pandemic. Like
Of course, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean yeah, it's hard to say. Like we were gonna go back into the studio, and then the pandemic
yeah.
started up again, and then we weren't. And now Mungala's working on a project of his own
Oh, cool.
solo project. So I'm gonna work with him on a couple things on that. So there's things going on, and I think Andrew's he's writing a project as well.
Oh, cool.
You know what I mean? So things are happening over there, and as a group, I think we'll work on. I know we'll definitely work on another project. I just don't know when. Yeah, I just don't know when. Because once you start working on something with that many people, things just start to happen, and as soon as you know it, you got a project. That's how all our projects have come to be. So yeah, I'm looking forward to when that time comes though.